Hello everyone and welcome to the first game we'll be showing from round 3 of 2021 Tata Steel Chess Tournament. It's Fabiano Caruana versus young Krzysztof Duda, and this is, I'm pretty sure, the most complicated game of round 3. I'll let you guys decide, but it's completely crazy. So without further ado, let's check it out as Fabi has the white pieces. So Fabi with the white pieces opens with e4. We have e5 by Duda, knight to f3, and already very interesting from the start, knight f6. Duda goes for the Petrov defense, which is very, very bold, as Fabi is known to be a great expert in the Petrov. I know it sounds kind of weird to say something like that because these guys are experts in every opening, but he did prepare the Petrov defense intensely for the World Chess Championship match against Magnus Carlsen, so of course Fabi knows his way around this, maybe a little bit more than around other openings. So knight captures on e5, going for the main line, d6, and now knight back to f3. We have knight captures on e4, and now knight to c3, going for the Nimzovich attack. We have knight captures, d captures, and now bishop to e7, just continuing development. For those of you who are maybe only beginning your chess journey here, you might think, why not pin the knight with bishop to g4. This is one of the cases where this is a bit too early to do something like this, because for example after h3, bishop h5 and queen d5, you get a nice double attack on the bishop and the pawn here, and black will be forced to give up the bishop, and already we're just starting the game, and already you've lost the bishop pair, and the white will enjoy a great advantage. As it is an open game, two bishops are to be preferred. So d captures on c3, Duda continues with bishop to e7, prepares the castle, and the bishop to e3 by Fabi. Knight to d7, and now queen to d2. Fabi prepares the castle queenside. Of course, he knows black is castling kingside, and he wants to attack on the king side. So castles by both players, so castles, and now knight to f6. And here, bishop to d3. And here Duda goes for c5, and we reach the position that is known as the leak variation, as during the 2018 World Chess Championship match between Carlsen and Caruana, this position has been leaked on accident by Fabi's team, and then everyone thought it was like some sort of a mental warfare to try and confuse Magnus and his team, to think that they were preparing this for their next game. It was pretty crazy. I don't know if you guys remember that, but here this is the position from that leak variation, and known moves here are rook h to e1, but here Fabi goes for a different move. He actually goes rook h to g1. And what's the rook doing on g1? Well, probably ready to support this push of a pawn to g4. So Duda, not eager to find out, he continues his attack on the queen side, b5, and now Fabi goes for it. He pushes g4, and this is not a pawn you capture. If you capture the pawn, you're just dead lost. For example, knight captures on g4, bishop to h6, and already it's extremely hard for black. Okay, you might not be dead lost, but it is very unpleasant. You cannot capture the bishop, and you have to play something. It's just a very ugly position. But I'm going to show what happens if the bishop is captured. Just queen captures, and now checkmate is being threatened here, and also here, since the bishop covers h7. So g6 is pretty much your only move, but then you just sacrifice everything. Bishop captures, f captures, rook captures with check, h captures, queen captures with check, and now after a few more checks, you're gonna bring the other rook into the attack, and now you can either start giving up pieces or just allow white to deliver a nice checkmate. So this is these are the kind of moves that are in the position if you accept such a pawn gift. So here Duda goes for bishop to b7, and now queen to e2, guarding that knight on f3. So queen to e2, and now c4, challenging this bishop here, and Fabi bravely goes bishop to f5, saying, I dare you to play g6, even though this was not played, but this doesn't really do anything, because after, let's say, knight d4, you don't, you can never capture this bishop. If you capture it, knight captures on f5, and it's just a terrible position for black to play. All of the lines are open to reach the white king, and it's just going to be bad. After g5, the queen is coming to h5, and it's just going to be all over. So here, after bishop to f5, rook to e8 by Duda, and now knight to d4 by Fabi. Again, trying to get Duda, well, not trying to, but claiming that g6 is still not an option, because queen to d2 now, for example. And again, there's no point in capturing the bishop. If you capture it, just opens up this rook's diagonal. King h8, now knight captures on b5. The bishop is coming to d4, and it's going to be an incredibly difficult position to defend, even though it might be playable. It's not something a human would do. So here, knight to d5, freeing up that f6 square for the bishop. You want to get your bishop to this diagonal, and here Fabi thought for some long time and played knight to e6, and this is quite an excellent square for the knight. The knight cannot be captured here, at least for the moment, because you don't even win material, because this comes with check, and you're also going to win the knight here. So it's, if anything, it's terrible for black. So instead we have queen to a5 by Duda, going for that a2 pawn. And now here Fabi needs to decide what to do. And here Fabi played queen to f3. But we are going to show what happens after the very, very tricky rook captures on d5, as there was a lot of discussion on rook captures on d5. Here you accept with bishop captures on d5, and now knight captures on g7. And this is a really crazy line, because if the knight is accepted, then g5, again, you open up the h file for the queen, and there's not much for black to do here. Queen captures on a2, you're going to go queen to h5, and now there is no good continuation. If rook h8 blocking this h7 pawn, just queen h6 check, king to g8, and now bishop to d4, threatening checkmate. And once you play something like bishop to f8, defending against this, just queen f6. And there is no defense against queen captures on h8 checkmate. You can deliver one little check here, but after king to d2, it's just all over. So this is what happens, but it's not forced. Like I said, after knight captures on g7, of course, Duda would not capture the knight. He would play queen captures on a2, and now the position is roughly equal. You could try a lot of things here, but it doesn't look all that great for white. So instead of this very tricky line, after queen to a5, Fabi doesn't go for this knight grab, but rather queen to f3, and it looks pretty crazy. Because you put your queen in the line of fire here. The bishop is, well, indirectly attacking the queen, x-raying it, so to say, but there is no knight captures on c3 with check. The king is still on c1, so this is one of the rare cases where it's good not to play the prophylactic king to b1. And here we have bishop to f6, not going for knight captures on c3 right away, even though you can do that also. Could be very nice. We're going to show it. Knight captures on c3. Now it does come with an attack on the queen, and after queen captures on b7, knight captures on a2 with check. And after king to b1, you can do a lot of things, but there doesn't seem to be a way to finish this for black. So it's a really crazy position. For example, f captures on h6, f captures on e6 can be played, but you know, not a lot can happen here. Bishop captures on h7, also a move. King captures, queen back to e4 with check, and now well, anything could happen here. But this is a really crazy line. You don't capture the bishop here. You go king to h8, and now it's a question of what do you do here. So what could be done here after, for example, this knight check, king to b1? It doesn't seem like black has all that many choices. So instead, after this queen to f3 move, Duda did not go for the capture right away. He played bishop to f6 first, and now comes g5 by Fabi. And this is a very sneaky position, attacking the bishop here. If you move the bishop, it's just game over. Captures, and queen captures on f7 check, followed by rook g3 to h3 will end in checkmate. So here, after this g5 move, we have bishop captures on c3. Now Duda goes for it by capturing with the bishop, and now it's a good moment for you to pause the video and try to find the only move that gives advantage to Fabi while I give you a couple of seconds. Sorry about that. I heard Medo. He was messing around with the trash can. Medo is a naughty dog. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, as this is the only good move for white here in this position, and that is bishop captures on h7 with check. So what do you do here? Of course, this square is covered by the knight, so you have to either capture or go to h8. King h8 doesn't work because queen h5, and then it's just lost. So you have to capture it, king captures on h7, and now g6 with check. Another great continuation by Fabi, opening up lines to the black king, but also messing up black's pawn structure here. So f captures on g6, and now comes knight to g5 with check. And here, king to h8. And now, another excellent pause the video moment. So once again, feel free to pause the video and find the, again, the only move that allows white to play for the win while I give you a couple of seconds. This is not an easy one. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting not rook captures on d5, even though this is also a great move, but bishop to d4. Bishop to d4 is a crazy line, but we're going to show rook captures on d5 just because I know a lot of you decided to play this. Point is that after bishop captures and queen captures, of course we have to play this queen captures on a2. Now with the bishop covering this square, queen to a1 will be checkmate. So here we don't really have a good continuation. We would have to settle for a perpetual, either by going knight check, followed by knight g5 check, knight f7 check, knight g5 check, or we could capture this bishop here, but it doesn't help all that much. Queen a1 check, king d2, and now we lose the rook here on g1. And again, we simply don't have ways of finishing the attack. We would again have to settle for a draw, a knight f7 check, knight g5 check, knight f7 check. So this is what happens after rook captures on d5. Very, exciting move, but it doesn't really work. Bishop to d4, on the other hand, is just a killer move, because here now you have to really figure out what you're doing. Now you could run into queen h3 check, queen h7 check, queen captures on g7. The bishop here is a monster, so black must eliminate it. So bishop captures on d4 was played, rook captures on d4, and now again, what do you play here? Here, knight to f6. Duda has to give up the bishop, because with the rook here, you simply cannot allow any checks now. For example, if you go after queen captures on a2, just rook to h4 with check, king g8, and now queen to f7 is checkmate. So this is out of the question. So after rook captures on d4, we have knight to f6. Now, if rook comes here, you can simply block that with knight to h4. But the bishop is now free for grabs, and this is exactly what Fabi does. Queen captures on b7, rook 8 to b8, and now comes queen to f7. Again, putting pressure on the pawn here. Then again, we have some very sneaky ideas. If you allow this capture, then for example, checks, a knight has to move, and then you can deliver checkmate with the queen. So here, instead, we have rook to e1 with check, and now of course not capturing, but rather rook back to d1. Rook captures on g1 with check, rook captures, and rook to e8. Now do that with the deadly threat of rook to e1. If you're not careful, if you play something like this now, then you are getting checkmated. Captures, and queen to e1 checkmate. So after rook to e8, we have knight to e6, blocking while threatening checkmate. And now there is only one move that saves Duda, and he goes for it. Rook captures on e6, queen captures, and queen captures on a2. And now we reach this position where Duda is up 2 points, but Fabi is up the exchange. And here, kind of a first critical moment of the game where Fabi needs to decide how to continue this brilliancy. And I'm just going to show it because it's this game is too complicated. Like every move we could explain for ages, as the game is too complicated. So here, Fabi played queen to h3 check, but rook captures on g6 seems to be the way to go. It doesn't look like there's a clear continuation, but you have to dodge a lot of checks. Queen a1 check, king d2, now d5, trying to advance those pawns, and now after queen to f7 threatening checkmate, now you go for knight to e4 with check, king e3, and now queen captures on b2, guards against checkmate. Queen to f8 check, king to h7, now queen to f5, threatening all sorts of nasty discoveries, but now queen c3 check, king f4, and now queen to d2 with check. king e5, and now queen captures on f2, not allowing any nasty discoveries because queen captures queen. So here white would have to trade, captures, captures, and then, for example, rook to g1, and now white would have a beautiful, beautiful position that is winning for white because the white king is super active, the black king is cut off from the game completely, and you're just gonna pick off all of these pawns and win the game. But it's not, of course, not an easy sequence to spot. I just show it for you guys to enjoy. So here, Fabi went for queen to h3 check, king to g8, now queen to e6 with check, king to h7, and here Fabi went for sort of a repetition, check, king g8, and now not queen to e6, but rather queen to a3. He, of course, cannot allow check followed by queen captures rook. So here, Fabi decided to go for this endgame where, of course, Duda accepts gladly, captures, captures. And now 6 pawns against 4, rook against the knight. Can Fabi win this? So Duda starts by activating the king. King f7, king to d2, we have a6, and now king to e3. So now we have this endgame on move 36, opposed to this one that we just mentioned, like this one, where the white king was super active and the black king was stuck here in the corner. But you cannot calculate all of this, and Fabi was extremely low on time, even though it was only move 29 when it was time to make such a decision, and you need to reach move 40 to gain additional time. So king e3, knight to d5 check, king to d4, and now knight back to e7. And here again, you have to decide what to do here, but it's such a crazy position that it's hard to even think like that. Although not really. Here Fabi played rook to e1 when in fact Peter Leko in the live stream said that a4 here was a critical move. And it is in fact true. a4 is a critical move because you're trying to weaken the c4 square. Of course, black will not capture, but after something like king a6, you can trade here, and now after rook g5, for example, attacking this pawn, knight f5 check, blocking the rook, king to c3, and now you are reaching this pawn. For example, king f6 pushes back the rook, and now g5, now you will finally reach this pawn. If knight d4 defending, you can play rook to d1, going for trying to get black to capture here, so you can capture here and here. So here black would defend, king e5, and now c3. Knight to f3, and only now do you go h3, defending your pawn, and now after any move is played, for example, king to e6, you're gonna capture on b5. So this is how you win the pawn. But again, this is incredibly complicated stuff, but interestingly, Peter Leko spotted a4 immediately. So he has a very brilliant positional mind. So here, rook to e1 by Fabi, king to e8, and this is a crucial tempo for Duda. He needs to get his king one step closer to defending those pawns, and now a4. But now a4 is not as potent as the king can defend that pawn. So king to d7, we have captures, captures, and now here with this captures and captures, both players have reached time control and have reached additional time. So here, rook to g1, paralyzing the knight as the pawns would fall here, king to c6, and now h4. Kind of baiting the knight to go after this pawn, so the rook can go after these pawns. So here, knight f5 check, king c3, and Duda grabs the pawn. We have king to b4, and now knight to f3. Attacking the rook, we have rook captures on g6, and now knight to d4, threatening to pick up this pawn with check. c3, Fabi kicks it away, and here Duda did spend some time thinking about whether to go for this check. For example, check, king to a5, and now, for example, after knight a1, rook captures on g7, but you will not be able to do anything here. Black can always bring the knight here with check. You can bring the king here, push the pawns, and it's gonna be a two-sided game, as black will also start pushing the pawns. If black exchanges this pawn, he will get two connected pass pawns. It's gonna be very dangerous. So here, instead, after c3, Duda decided not to go for that, as you know, he fought a lot not to lose this game. He played knight to e2 instead, and now rook captures on g7. Knight to f4, now threatening this check, which would kick away the king from the defense of the pawn, and then pick up the c3 pawn. King to a5 by Fabi, and now knight back to e2 by Duda, going after this pawn once again. King b4, knight to f4, king to a5, and here knight back to e2. And here Fabi played king to b4, and it was in this position that the players agreed to a draw, because neither side can make progress, and indeed the engine, the almighty engine, agrees with them, as the engine evaluates this as a 0.00 position. So yeah, definitely an unfinished masterpiece by Fabi, but it's often the case with Fabi's games. His games are just too complicated. I don't know, I guess he just knows so many computer lines that he goes into these deep engine positions, and then, you know, no one can make sense of such positions. He does an amazing job at it, but then when it's time for that little tweak, then of course it's too difficult for a human. But it's also very interesting how Leko spotted that a4 move, and but then again, Leko maybe wouldn't get such positions, so, you know, to each his own. But yeah, the game ended in a draw here, and brilliant. What an unfinished masterpiece this was. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Maybe a bit too complicated. It took a while for me to record this, but we have to cover, you know, such games with such brutal positions. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll show more games from round 3, and only then will I show the standings. As I said, we're going to show the standings after round 3. I would like to thank Chief Arbiter Lothar Schmidt, Brian Flynn, Frank Benner, Gerhard Homa, and Thomas Bardauskas for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Tata Steel 2021, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.